Hello, my darlings, and welcome back to Radio Wasteland, your favorite show about the paranormal and conspiracies.
Yeah.
I figure if I say it enough, people will be all, oh, Radio Wasteland, you mean my favorite show? Favorite show about paranormal and conspiracies?
Exactly. Hitler said, the bigger lies are easier to swallow, and if you say it often enough, people will believe it. So.
Well, thanks for ruining my plan. I try to make it a point not to follow things that Hitler said.
I mean, he wasn't wrong. He was just evil.
Right, yeah, I guess that's true.
I mean, okay, so he was wrong about a lot of stuff, but not that particular point. I think that was a cogent observation.
Well, as a parent, I am aware that
I do not want to be quoted saying Hitler wasn't wrong.
Right. As a parent, I am aware that there's such a thing as positive manipulation.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And what could be more positive than manipulating people into listening to our show?
Totally. It helps them. It helps them. I'm your host, Chauncey Hallworth, and this is my co-host, Kara. Kara, how are you doing this week?
Pretty good here.
Pretty good? Nothing new and exciting? Your life has not changed in the last week in some sort of dramatic way?
No.
Mine neither.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine neither. Nothing too exciting on my end, I guess. So this week we're going to just talk about some news that has gone on throughout the year, and especially this last month. It's been a busy month. Today is Cyber Monday. Yeah,
we do a lot of guests, but sometimes it's good to just, catch up and do a quick recap of everything you all should know about, why the whole world's out to get you and how there are creepy things hiding in the shadows that, are unknown and unknowable.
Especially in the busy season, there was Thanksgiving, Black Friday.
Exactly.
Let's see. Small Business Saturday, then we got Sunday off, and then it's Cyber Monday today, and then tomorrow was Giving Tuesday.
Small Business Saturday.
Well, that's why small businesses are doing so well. Because
that's a good point.
I just think it was nice that they put Small Business Saturday in between Black Friday and Cyber Monday instead of just getting all the big stuff out of the way first,
Right.
Because I really think that, our show comes from here in Reading. And I feel like during the recession, we would have been hit a lot less hard if we didn't have a Walmart or if we didn't have a Target and stuff like that. If people shopped locally.
Oh, absolutely.
We would have been all right, but nobody wants to do that, including myself. I don't like to go into Walmart, though.
Yeah. Well, I buy everything on Amazon. The last time I shopped in a store for any reason was... Actually, it wasn't that long ago. I went into Best Buy because I needed new headphones quickly. But under ordinary circumstances, I would have bought them on Amazon for much cheaper. So.
Yeah, but Amazon's like the worst.
Well, that's my point. Amazon is the opposite in every way of shopping locally. It's like the mega, if big box stores are the enemy, this is like the Leviathan that eats big box stores.
Right.
So, and yet I support them because I... don't care.
All right. Well, that's very progressive of you.
Yeah, I know. Don't tell any of my leftist friends.
Right.
I'll lose my cred.
Right. And so it's been a busy week, a lot of politics going on, a lot of caravans, a lot of people charging the border. Stuff like that.
Russia's going to invade Ukraine, and, Brazil's got a strongman new president, and there's the whole thing. Saudi Arabia is killing American journalists, and we're gassing children. I don't like anyone right now. I like Canada.
You like Canada?
Yeah, you never hear about, awful repressive stuff Canada is doing. But everyone else on the world stage, I'm sick of them. I've had it.
I see. So. All right. Well, coming up here... we're going to be talking about the news and some great articles, talking about Satanists, Mothman, all that great stuff that people want to know about. You're listening to Radio Wasteland. Come on back. All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland. And we're talking about basically articles in the news from the past month that you might have been too busy. We're talking about everything. And the first one that I'm bringing to the table for discussion are an article from Mashable.com. Satanists are pushing back as the devil appears in more shows and movies.
They're pushing back against this?
Yes,
that seems
they are.
Like, positive representation.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of Satan stuff that's come out this year. Hereditary was a cool movie. Castle Rock, So normally, this year I think was also American Horror Story, Apocalypse or something, and the Church of Satan had pushed back at them about their portrayal of Anton LaVey. They felt was portrayed as more Satan than non-Satan, but Anton LaVey was really the Anton LaVey Satanist church is much more based around not a belief in Satan, but a belief in oneself and stuff like that. But the Satanic Temple, more so in the news for actually worshiping Satan,
interesting,
has leveled a $50 million copyright lawsuit against Netflix and Warner Brothers, contending that their iconic religious statues was ripped off for use in the chilling adventures of Sabrina.
Which is a pretty good show, actually.
And they're saying that they're profiting from their statue, which was called Baphomet with Children. And it was, you might remember in the news, they initially tried to get this statue up in response to Senator Jason Rappert, who sponsored a 2015 bill trying to approve a statue of the Ten Commandments to be put in Capitol grounds.
See, this is what's confusing to me. I thought that Satanists in general did not actually believe in Satan. They were just snarky atheists who were trying to, annoy religious people.
There are two. Okay. So the Church of Anton LaVey was much more a worship yourself, sort of hedonist, anarchistic sort of belief system.
Okay.
The Satanic Temple, I believe, is a little more representing themselves as Satanists, but really even then, I think they're sarcastic. I think what they're really doing is pushing back against other religions that are allowed in our government.
Right. They're basically just church and state activists. At least the Satanists I have met.
But I have to say, I did watch The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. I love it.
Right.
And they totally ripped off this statue.
Oh, they did?
They fully did. Okay. It is exact.
Well, all right. See, that's what confuses me, though, because it's like that. Doing that makes it seem like they have a legitimate belief in Satan.
Right.
Because, this has nothing to do with church and state or whatever, but I don't know.
That's kind of the funny thing. Through the 80s and everything, there was all that stranger danger and stuff like that, and, Satanist killings and stuff like that.
Which was based on a few, anecdotal events that may not have actually occurred.
Yeah, I think I was reading that there has never actually been a truly satanic ritual killing.
It was all just kind of
hysteria. Hysteria and or crazies, people with serious...
the people who were afraid of it, that was the hysteria.
Right, it was all hysteria like that, or it was crazies sort of acting on that who had schizophrenia or something like that. Yeah. Because here in the United States, schizophrenia is closely tied to religion.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Which is really weird, because if you look into schizophrenia in other countries, like in Japan, it's not tied to Shinto or Buddhism or something else like that.
No.
In Japan, it's really tied with, failure. And in India, it's really...
In terms of, what people experience from, voices and stuff, you're saying.
And in India, it's really sort of tied to paranoia of your neighbors and stuff like that. But here in America, it's very tied to religion. And probably because, to throw a bone to the religious people, probably because religion has had such a big part in taking care of these people over the years here in America.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, but I think demonic possession stories, that's a huge part of our culture that isn't as much in many other countries.
Yeah.
Although, every country, every culture has possession as a trope or idea or something at some point in their religious history, but in many countries it's kind of fallen by the wayside, but not really so much in the United States.
Yeah, well, Evil on our show with a lot of topics, this Satanist topic, is probably a little too tongue-in-cheek to put too much into, but it's a common question that I'm always trying to ask. I think I know the answer to this, Kara, but do you believe in God?
No.
Do you believe in any kind of higher power?
Maybe.
Maybe.
I'm agnostic on the second one.
Yeah.
But when people say, do you believe in God, I assume what they mean is, like, your...
Capital G.
Yeah, your Christian conception of God.
Right.
As in the character from the Bible, and I say no. But if you ask, do you believe could there be a super advanced alien intelligence out there that's so powerful that it's godlike? Sure.
Well, I don't think that would fall into the realm of God. I think
it would.
I think falling into the realm of God would be something that came before everything and started everything.
Well, if the universe is a simulation, then an alien being would absolutely qualify for that.
Yes, of course. But their universe, who started their universe?
Don't know.
Yeah, I know you don't know, but I'm saying, do you believe that there could be a God? An omnipotent, ever-existing God.
Omnipotent? No.
Okay.
I think the concept of omnipotence is logically just doesn't work.
Right.
And in fact, I think the Bible only makes sense if you assume that God is not omnipotent, but just really unimaginably powerful.
So I do believe that it's a possibility.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why I believe that it's a possibility is that I believe that there is an inherent right and wrong. And if there is, where would that have come from? So I have to entertain the possibility, if I'm going to sit here and feel that there's a right and wrong, that it should be apparent to everybody. Yeah.
I guess I don't believe that necessarily. I would call myself a moral relativist.
I see.
I think there's such a thing as a true and a false. I think there's an objective truth to reality. But, I think if something's wrong, it's wrong because it causes suffering. And ultimately, that's a human conception we've agreed upon because people don't like suffering.
Yeah, I wish we could,
kind of by definition.
I wish we could communicate with our listeners and find out how many people believe in God, even though that's not really the question. Of those people that believe in God, how many people believe in a devil?
I've talked to religious people about this a lot because I'm always curious. I think this is a really fascinating question. Most people I've talked to said not only do they believe in the devil, but they believe that the devil and or his servants are literally here in the world, nudging things a little bit.
Yeah.
Which I find interesting because you don't hear that very often.
Yeah, it's totally cool. I mean, obviously, I'm on a paranormal show and stuff like that. I think.
No kidding. I love that. But that's
some of the greatest horror films of all time, Sabrina.
Just if you're a very secular person, you often think of modern religion as very similarly secular and kind of urbane.
Right.
But that's not really true.
Well, I think C.S. Lewis put it in a really good way that I feel kind of squashes some Christian belief systems of the devil. And C.S. Lewis, for those of you out there, Christian writer later in life, prolific Christian writer.
Right. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, all of that.
Right. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe on. Very Christian.
Yeah.
He said in the preface to the Screwtape Letters,
which is a fantastic book.
Yeah. He said that in this world, a lot of Christians believe that the devil is the antithesis of God and that he's not. If he's the opposite of anything, he would be the opposite of Michael the Archangel, and that the devil doesn't have the ability to be everywhere at once and to influence the world in the way that God does.
Right.
And that most evils in this world are committed by man and have nothing to do with the devil.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And this is coming from C.S. Lewis, who was a firm believer in the devil.
Mm-hmm.
He did believe in it. But he also made it clear that most evils in this world were by man's choices and not influenced by the devil.
And I think most of the religious people I've talked to would agree with that, I think.
I think so.
I think even people who, for instance, believe in demonic possession, which is one thing that personally I'm like, maybe. But I think most of those people would agree that, the vast majority of such reports are false. And, most people who think they're possessed are not. And, most of that kind of thing is not real. But maybe
what I want to know is, are they a physical entity? Like, if there was a demon in this building, is it hiding behind a corner, or is it able to be invisible and ghost-like? And, what am I looking for?
Well, we've talked to, we've asked like 20 different paranormal investigators that exact question. I
but
think
they're all mediums. They're all like, praying over crystals. They're all like a little bit different than like a straight up fundamentalist Christian.
Okay.
I want to know what fundamentalist Christians feel. Are they physical entities, or can they be both, or what's up with that?
I don't know, but I suspect most people believe that they're incorporeal if they manifest in this world.
I see. Or do they jump from brain to brain?
That's
Are they
what I
existent
suspect,
within us?
I have no idea what other people believe.
So, that was
an interesting question.
Yeah, Satanism to me is something that is very interesting for two reasons. To close this up before we come to the break. For two reasons, I find it really interesting because I'm a horror movie nut.
Of course.
And because it sort of portrays part of this world beyond our world. And, of course, I'm totally interested in that. And also, it seems like, if all this was real, we would have more Satanists because, like, rooting for the underdog is kind of the American way. Don't you think? It's like, we know this guy's going to lose, and, you got to kind of root for the underdog. He's going to lose and stuff like that. It's like, I personally feel like I don't personally believe in God, but I mean, if the devil showed up to me and he's just all, hey, want to sign this and sell your soul? I'd be all, I believe in God now, and you're out. I'm done with you.
Oh, my God. Okay.
Wouldn't you? I'd be yeah, I'm done with this. I'm out.
Okay, so I have to answer yes, because Yeah,
that's a no-go for me. I don't know if I have a soul, but as soon as I'm informed that I have one, I'm sure I'm going to take better care of it. All right, you're listening to Radio Wasteland. When we come on back, we're going to talk more about the news.
With their fingers crossed.
All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland. We're talking about some news articles. Kara, what do you got for us?
Yeah, move over to Satanism. We're talking about Mothman.
Mothman again. What is it with you and the Mothman?
I have a total crush on Mothman.
Totally.
I will be his bride.
Yeah, Kara wants to have like 1,000 Mothman babies. Which, for all we know, might just be one pregnancy.
Oh, God.
It's gross.
Okay, I'm not into Mothman.
They might be chest bursters,
but
it's hot.
Jesus Christ.
You can't say that on the radio. Not in that context.
Okay.
All right, tell us about Mothman.
We were just talking about Satan.
Yeah, no.
Well, I don't want to get sued by some Satanists for being, discriminatory.
You can't get sued for that.
Okay, well, whatever. Anyway, so I've actually discussed this on the show a little bit before. Basically, it was a new article that was just kind of recapping all the Mothman craziness of 2017 in Chicago, which hasn't ended, really, but it has slowed to a crawl. The gist of it is that throughout 2017, a little bit of 2016, a little bit of 2018, some 55 people, I'm pretty sure it was actually more, but the article only reported 55 people, so I don't know, have seen Mothman or a Mothman-like thing in the skies above Chicago. Now, this is somewhat concerning for a couple of reasons. First, Mothman's appearance is said to foretell tragedy.
Right.
There are some reports that Mothman showed up before Chernobyl, which I think those are a little dubious, to be honest. But what is clear is that there were a lot of reports of Mothman in Point Pleasant before a bridge collapse that killed a few hundred people.
So these sightings that we're discussing there in Chicago, where was Point Pleasant?
Point Pleasant is in West Virginia. It's more of a... Yeah, it's a very different setting.
But not that far.
Yeah, Mothman's kind of a denizen of your typical rural areas, so him coming to Chicago is kind of your, Freddy or Jason in New York kind of situation.
Jason Takes Manhattan.
Jason Takes Manhattan. I never
Friday
watched
the 13th,
that movie.
Part 8.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Right. I knew you would know what I was trying to say.
And so there are a lot of Mothman-like sightings.
Right. So, to be clear, they're sightings in general of a man-sized creature with wings, in many cases glowing red eyes, in many cases claws. There was at least one peculiar case of a driver who swears he saw a person transforming into some kind of bird creature, which is terrifying, but that's only one report, so who knows.
Right.
But what's interesting is the sheer number of these sightings, and when you go and look up the actual accounts, like, you might think, oh, they're just seeing an owl or something, it's just hysteria, they're just on drugs. There is no way some of these accounts are incredibly vivid. Like, there's one woman who reported that she was in a parked car with her boyfriend, and I don't know, they were just hanging out, I guess, when this enormous man-sized bat creature lands on the hood of the car and starts scratching at the windshield with long claws.
Right.
Apparently,
obviously a rabid owl.
Right, clearly. That's what owls look like.
Right,
they're man-sized and they have long human arms ending in claws.
Right.
And glowing red eyes.
Yeah.
So, Mothman is one of my favorite cryptids because to me the Point Pleasant sightings they're packed together and they're all mostly pretty darn credible. And the Chicago sightings, exactly the same thing. That's 50 years later.
That's always been the weird thing about Mothman to me, is that in the case of, like, Bigfoot and some of these other cryptids, you have these researchers going out.
Right, they're looking for it.
And really looking for it and acquiring evidence or coming up with concepts and, like, all this stuff. And in the case of Mothman, it seems like all we have is a large number of sightings with really no backstory there. We got no backstory.
No, absolutely not. Now, in Point Pleasant, there's always theories, right? In Point Pleasant, Mothman was sighted around an abandoned military site for a while. So some people propose that, maybe it was some kind of freakish mutant or something. Right.
That was drawn towards tragedy. It was some precognition of tragedy.
Exactly. But no one knows for sure. And it's not like there's any... It's like Bigfoot. It's not like there's any physical evidence of this creature. People have just seen it. People have seen it, keeping pace with cars, driving 100 miles an hour. People have seen it doing things that animals can't do.
Right.
And yet people have seen it. So what is it? Is it incorporeal? Is it a space alien? Is it a bodily demon, as we were just talking about from last episode? It's really hard to say.
Cryptids from the scientific angle of being an actual cryptid, so if Mothman is some sort of magical demon ghost, it is not a cryptid.
No.
Right. Yeah. But from the angle of being a cryptid, I find cryptids to be incredibly interesting.
Absolutely.
But there is just so little evidence that anything truly fantastic has been found. But are we just so easily desensitized? Maybe we have found things like the gorilla. The gorilla wasn't actually discovered until the 1900s.
That's right. Yeah.
And at the time we might have been, oh my God, that's a huge man monkey. Because at the time it would have been, that's a big monkey. Big ape.
Because they didn't know about gorillas.
Right. Or giant squids. Are we so desensitized that they lose their magic? And then maybe these things really are. And then once we find it, that's Mothman. We've known about Mothman. It's fine. It's like the gorilla, It's Mothman.
See, that's the thing, though, is because Mothman is consistently cited. For one thing, it's always one. You never see a group of Mothmen.
That's true.
So that in itself is kind of weird, but some animals are solitary, so who knows. But Mothman is always cited seeing the most bizarre things, doing the most bizarre things. Like a bird the size of a man cannot fly at 100 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Yet there are multiple reports of it doing that.
Well, a bird the size of a man can't fly at all.
Well, yeah. That's a good point.
Its wingspan would have to be absolutely massive to be able to pick up a man.
It just doesn't work physically. Right. Mm-hmm. And yet that's what these sightings seem to indicate. So I don't know. I'm on the... I think there's something going on, actually. I'm a wholehearted believer that there is something to this. Who knows what, but...
So as our local resident Mothman lover...
Yes.
Maybe I should make different terms for that, but enthusiast. As our local Mothman enthusiast.
Mothmanophilic.
What do you think Mothman is? Like, when you sit there and you, read this stuff, surely you have some sort of concept of what you think it must be.
No, I don't, though.
You don't?
That's what's so interesting is I really don't know. I think whatever it is, it's probably similar to the Dogman phenomenon, just Mothman.
Right.
Which, for those who don't know, we had Linda Godfrey on a while ago, and she was talking about sightings of unknown upright canids all over the world. Same thing. Right. Lots of sightings, lots of credible sightings, lots of very weird sightings. You know, these creatures behaving in ways that ordinary animals can't. Right. So what she said is when we asked her, what do you think these are, she said she thought they were skinwalkers, basically. So
sort
maybe
of a
that's what it
shape-shifting
is.
spiritual thing?
Yeah, well, skinwalkers are people, are human beings who can shapeshift, but I don't know if I want to go so far to endorse the possibility of literal magic. But I don't know. That's what she said about Dogman. Who knows? Maybe I'm like 50-50 on ghosts. Maybe these are incorporeal entities of some sort that people are seeing. Maybe they're space aliens. Maybe I have no idea. I can't come up with an explanation that doesn't sound crazy when I say it.
Yeah, and that's what makes these things so fun, is how absolutely crazy they are. You know, and, Linda Gottfried was a prime example. So she was on talking about the Beast of Bray Road. Mm-hmm. And, here this just sounds absolutely ridiculous, but she's no fool. No. You know, she is obviously a real credible person who is really trying to research.
And she was a reporter who just happened to get drawn into the story and found it compelling enough to continue for decades to gather all this evidence. To me, that's incredibly compelling.
Incredibly. All right, you're listening to Radio Wasteland. When we come back, we got another news article for you to listen about. Can't wait for the hereafter. All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland. We're talking about different articles from this year and this past month because you've been too busy spending all your money. Let me give you a little spending money advice. When my wife and I first got together, we got ourselves in so much Christmas debt that it took us like 3 years to pay our way out of it. And at that point, we decided we weren't going to spend that much money any longer. And what we did is we decided we were going to buy one present for the kids from us and one from Santa, and that was it. Fill their stockings, and we're done. And here we are. That's all my kids ever expect, and they are totally happy and totally thrilled to get that. So stop spending your money on a bunch of crap. All right, so our next topic we're discussing here is Slender Man.
Speaking of Christmas.
So the article is the failed Slender Man movie that was a nail in the coffin of a dying fandom off of TheVerge.com. Yeah. Basically, the article is really sort of discussing the failure of the Slender Man movie and about how it's really sort of the death of Slender Man. The article, one part of the article totally pissed me off, and it tried to compare Slender Man to like the Cthulhu of the new of the 21st century, and I'm just all like, what?
Yeah, it doesn't have that kind of staying power.
No, it doesn't. But basically,
although Marble Hornets was awesome, I have to say.
Which was?
Marble Hornets. It was kind of the first. Like, Slender Man was introduced on just this creepy pasta forum. It was just image manipulation, so there's just pictures of Slender Man. Then these guys made this web series called Marble Hornets about Slender Man, and that's almost everything Slender Man related. Like, they didn't make Slender Man up, but pretty much all the tropes associated with him come from Marble Hornets, which was awesome. Right. But the creators haven't done anything that is anywhere remotely as good since, and it got kind of stupid towards the end. So
everything does
exactly.
So for you listeners out there who don't know what Slender Man is, or maybe have only some concept of what Slender Man is, Slender Man was originally an idea, a story, a collection of stories, a collection of people, of course, created by one person to begin with on a website called Creepypasta, which was a website that's shared sort of independent writers, sort of horror stories, horror images, horror collections, exactly, and so on and so forth. And Slender Man really came to, well, for one, Slender Man was hugely popular long before any sort of tragedy happened.
Oh,
to the
absolutely.
point where anybody under the age of 14 probably knew what this was here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And it really sort of came to popularity when two 12-year-olds blamed Slender Man for inspiring them to stab a classmate.
Yes.
And so they lured this girl out into the woods. On May 31st, 2014, two 12-year-old girls in Wisconsin, Waukesha, Wisconsin,
Where
held down
all
and
bad events occur.
yeah, totally. Held down and stabbed a 12-year-old classmate 19 times. That means one of them stabbed at least one more time than the other one. And the victim crawled out of the woods to a roadway. A passing cyclist alerted the authorities, and the victim survived. And basically these girls testified in court that one of them was definitely more crazy than the other one. Mm-hmm. One of them said she also conversed with Lord Voldemort and with one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I don't know which one, but one of them.
This is crucial information. You know, if you're talking with Raphael, you know, of course he's going to tell you to kill, but talk to any of the others. I mean, they're
if you're talking to Michelangelo, you know, you're just going to be 400 pounds and eating a lot of pizza. Right. They were tried separately as adults. It took a couple of years to try them because they had to bring them down from their crazy before they could try them as adults, which is, really weird.
Right.
That's the
well,
way
one of them
works.
basically just had untreated schizophrenia, right? Like she was not even really functional in terms of perceiving the world around her.
I assume that's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle one.
I think so. I don't know.
I understand.
This is the first I've heard about the Ninja Turtle thing.
I understand that Slender Man was sort of created in this Blair Witch style where kids might be all, Slender Man's real. I get it, maybe. That it was made in this sort of mockumentary style. Lord Voldemort was not. No. If you're communicating with Lord Voldemort, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, you got some issues.
Right. I mean, if Lord Voldemort was real, I would be in a whole heap of dog doo because he is not supposed to be named. And I'm sitting here naming him. All right, so they were tried separately as adults after they came down from the crazy, and one was sentenced to spend 3 years institutionalized, and the other one 25 years.
Right.
And then later, this led to some other stuff. A 14-year-old girl was arrested after allegedly trying to burn her family's house down with her mom and sister in it. Mm-hmm. 9-year-old brother, not sister, 9-year-old brother in it. And the police found her shortly afterwards in a park where she was reading an ebook called Soul Eater, which is really kind of more associated with what she's got going on there. But the police, I think, kind of latched on to the Slender Man. And then there were some suicide attempts, ages 12 to 24 in Pine Ridge Indian Reservation that was also blamed on Slender Man. I find it incredibly amazing that anybody would fall for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is, whoa. It is just absolutely crazy.
To be fair, Marble Hornets is very scary.
I don't know.
I mean, the first season is anyway.
What do you know about scary? You know nothing.
That is true. I forgot who I'm talking to, the wise scariness sensei. I'm talking to Pai Mei of horror movies here, and you're whipping your beard around and
right. So this was basically the whole concept of this even hitting the mainstream again. And I'm, of course, joking with you about this. I'm actually really interested in reading this now that you tell me about it, the Marble Hornets.
Yeah, well, it's a web series. You watch it on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm going to check it. Some of those web series you actually read. That's why I said that.
Oh, okay.
That's sort of like Homestuck or something,
I also like Homestuck, but, I would, being a millennial.
So, the reason why this hit is because this Slender Man movie is considered the end. Nobody is ever going to fall for this again because this movie bombed. And I don't know if it's fair to say that it bombed. It actually made like $50 million, and I bet you that's way more than they invested in it.
That is true.
But it has 8% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes based off of 65 reviews.
Ooh, that's painful.
That's like really low.
Yeah.
That is like really, really bad. And this is actually, there have been quite a few other Slender Man movies. For some reason, this was like the first one that they considered to be So it might be coming from the creators, but there have been quite a few others that sort of ripped off the
Yeah,
concept.
there was one that was supposed to be, like, to some extent a continuance of Marble Hornets, but it was terrible.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, yeah, it just wasn't great. But I don't know. I really think the death knell of Slender Man is something that is cool. Is like, it was created by 20-year-old guys who are nerds who spend a lot of time on the internet. As soon as it gets co-opted by 14-year-old emo girls, the 20-year-old guys aren't going to want to have anything to do with it.
Thank God. I mean, I don't know. Your age brackets you put together there are a little disturbing, so.
Well, yeah. I'm just saying, they wouldn't have even had to kill anyone, really. The story would just have to have been 14-year-old girls like Slender Man to kill it.
Right. Yeah. It just amazes me what some people will believe. Even the Blair Witch had a lot of great marketing behind it, but...
Yeah, I don't think Slender Man was really ever presented as real, even. Like, it was jokingly. It was in a very sort of joking, ironic sense. People would be like, oh, the more you think about Slender Man, the more likely he is to get you, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
It's classic paranoia fuel, but that's just to heighten the horror surrounding it.
I've even heard a guest on Coast to Coast talking about how it was actually real.
Yeah.
And I like
that is weird.
I had to turn it off because I couldn't even enjoy myself while listening to it.
Right. That's very silly.
Yeah.
To be honest. But,
all right. Well, we've been talking about some articles. You've been listening to Radio Wasteland. All right, and welcome back to Radio Wasteland. We're talking about news and articles, and we got a polarizing one for our last one here.
Yes. So this has actually been all over the news. I think I first read it in the LA Times.
Some people might call it depolarizing.
Depolarizing? Oh, in the sense of polar, as in like cold.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
See what I did there?
We're talking about climate change, people.
Yeah.
Specifically, we're talking about the climate change report that was buried on Black Friday, even though it was not going to be released anywhere around now. Originally, it was going to be released in December, but the Trump administration decided it would probably be best to release it the day after Thanksgiving.
So let's deal with that conspiracy first.
Right, that's the first thing.
Do we have proof that they purposefully put it out on that day to bury it, other than the sneaky timing?
That's what the authors of the report are saying. And no, we don't have proof. We know they were told by higher-ups, okay, we're going to release it on this date. They don't know who those higher-ups were, but it couldn't have been anyone but the White House.
Right.
So, no, there's no proof, but there's strong circumstantial evidence.
Right. And so the deal is they released it on Black Friday.
In order to try and keep it out of the news cycle.
And now the news is basically reporting that somewhat backfired.
Yeah, in fact, I think it might not have gotten the attention it did if not for this whole bit of shenanigans. But, it's not getting any attention in conservative media, and that's the people who need to be convinced that climate change is a real thing.
Right.
So, to the rest of us, it's kind of preaching to the choir. But the gist of the report is that by the end of the century, in some sectors, climate change will be costing us hundreds of billions of dollars and thousands of American lives every year, which I think is lowballing it, because the report they released a few months ago said that by the end of the century, we could be looking at a global increase of 3 degrees Celsius. And if we get to 3 degrees, there are natural feedback loops that make it very likely we're going to hit 5, 6 degrees, which kills everyone. So I think, placing it in terms of monetary, values kind of misses the point of also will be extinct within 2 centuries. But
let's clarify this for some people, because a lot of people are going to have different sides on this. There's no way they're not. And a lot of people are going to hear 6 degrees and they're going to be all, I don't know, I can handle 6 more degrees. How is that going to kill everybody?
Okay, so first of all, just to be clear here, it's Celsius we're talking about. So that's more than 6 degrees Fahrenheit. But the big thing is this is a global body increasing by that much. So that's, it's going to be twice that over land and, a little less than half that over water. It varies by place. So many places will increase a lot. So the real point, though, here is, a person can walk around in 90-degree weather. We're from Reading. We know that.
Right.
And even if, we get consistent 100-degree heat waves that last from April to October, we'll still survive, but the plants won't.
Right.
That's the trouble. The trouble is that you cannot really grow food in a world that is 6 degrees Celsius more than now.
Right.
And it's really not clear how you might go about, say, genetically engineering crops to survive that kind of heat. Plants, megafauna, which is what humans are, things like people, bears, moose, etc., we're resilient to temperature changes. Your fish, plants, that kind of thing are not. And so it's hard to see how those creatures are going to survive such a dramatic change in their natural ecosystems, which in turn will deprive us of the natural resources we need to survive.
Right, yeah.
And that's in addition to sea level rise, catastrophic storms, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Now, that's 6 degrees here we're talking about. To be clear, what the Trump administration is saying is we're looking at 3 degrees by the end of the century if we change nothing. So, obviously, 3 degrees isn't nearly that bad. As the report concludes, we're looking at dramatically lower yields in agriculture for just virtually across the board, and probably worsening refugee problems, far worse wildfires, and so forth.
Right.
But it's hard to actually tell how bad 3 degrees is going to be.
Right.
Right now we're at like 1.3 above industrial levels.
Right.
So.
And throughout, we take core samples, and we've never seen a raise in temperature or carbon levels like we have since the industrial.
No, yeah. Over the past 200 years, we've seen the kind of change that, if it is just up to like solar cycles and stuff, only happens over the course of tens of thousands of years.
Right. I find it really difficult to have a nice conversation about this.
So do I.
I really want to sort of. So one of the arguments that I tend, and for transparency, I am a firm believer that we are causing this. At least we are part of the reason. Some people can make the argument like maybe there's a cycle, maybe there is a cycle, but we're part of the reason.
Yeah,
and
there's definitely a natural cycle, and
we know we're part of the reason. For one, the carbon that's in the atmosphere, we can tell if it's man-made or not because it's burned fossil fuels, and by the molecular count and weight of the molecules, we know where it came from. We know it didn't come from a supervolcano or something. We know it came from burned fossil fuels.
Right.
But
and we know that carbon dioxide makes the planet warmer because we know how greenhouses work.
Right.
The greenhouse effect is incredibly basic science.
Right. So I have a hard time having a nice conversation about this because, I get the argument of wanting to put it in the back burner. But I have a friend who's conservative, military guy, and like he doesn't believe in global warming, and I say to him, I'm just all but you're conservative, you believe in taking care of your own stuff. He's all, I do, and I'm all, and you're a military guy, you're all about taking care of your own and doing right, and he's all, I am, and I'm just all, okay, so regardless of if there's global warming, why is it cool to take a crap in your backyard and just leave it there? Shouldn't we be cleaning this stuff up regardless, just because we're people and we're smart? So that's one of my issues. Yeah. Is like, why is there even this big argument where like, I should be able to crap in the ocean all I want? That's a weird argument. Another one of the arguments is that I say this all the time, as close back in history as Benjamin Franklin, one person was capable of having a pretty good understanding of all the world's sciences.
Right.
Since then, that is just not an option.
No.
There are literally people. So in my career of an SEO and online stuff, there are literally people in my career making six figures who know nothing about computers. They just deal with emails.
Right.
That's all they do. And they are just masters at it. And it literally consumes their minds. You just are not capable of knowing these things. We have to comfortably delegate these things to scientists. We have to believe these scientists. But I understand that so many people, because you and I are in this world of fake news and this world of manipulative advertising, to the point where we're not sure if we can believe these people who are telling us these things. And I understand that it's difficult for some people.
Yeah.
Because they don't believe. Personally, I have. Earlier, we were talking about Christianity and Satanism and stuff like that. And my religion, I would say, is science. So I am kind of a blind follower of science.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I would say it actually wouldn't really make much sense to tackle climate change if it wasn't man-caused. Because to tackle this problem effectively, we're talking expenditures of trillions of dollars.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. If a comet was coming and going to hit the Earth, that's not man-caused, but still we try to stop it because it's going to kill us.
Well, right, but the only effective way to stop climate change is by reducing our own emissions. I mean, yeah, there's techno fixes. People are talking about, solar mitigation, all these kinds of things, but those technologies are so far from being scalable. Like this is the point I make. Like, people say, well, they have machines now that can pull carbon out of the atmosphere. It's like, we already did. They're called trees.
Right.
Yeah,
totally.
The issue is having enough of any of these technologies to affect the entire planet.
Right.
Which is something we did by accident with fossil fuels by basing every technology on Earth around them for 200 years.
Right.
Like, are we going to be able to put that same expenditure into putting sulfur aerosols into the atmosphere? I really doubt it. No matter how you tackle climate change, we're talking trillions of dollars of investments.
Right. And if we do solidify this as us being the problem and really solidify it, that we have to stop, there are going to be wars fought over this.
Yeah.
There are going to be
that's
wars.
My problem is I would argue that not believing that is tantamount to not believing in science at all.
Yeah, because let's say we all decide as a country that this is going on.
Yeah.
And Iran decides that it's not, and they're going to keep doing what they're doing or whatever it is they want. We're going to end up going to war with other countries who are basically polluting our air because you seem to know more about this than I do, and
I did. I took a couple of classes on it in college.
Yeah,
I've read several books on it. So,
Mrs. Smarty Pants.
Yeah. Okay. So this is like the one topic in all of the world where I feel comfortable, like
I see.
like discoursing at a high level. Most things, I will admit, I don't know much, but on climate change, I actually do know a fair amount. So shoot.
So here's my understanding: that carbon is put into our environment in a way that it doesn't immediately build up, that it starts to get processed by our environment. And as it starts to come out, we have a buildup. And that there will be a point of no return where that carbon will be coming out of our environment so much that it doesn't really matter what we do, because it will be coming out of our environment for hundreds, if not thousands of years after.
Yeah, so that's why I was saying if we hit 3 degrees, it's pretty much certain we'll hit 6 degrees. Is because at that point, natural cycles take over. You're right. So, for one thing, the ocean absorbs a lot of carbon dioxide, but there's a limit to how much it can really do that before it's sort of saturated. And then suddenly, we start seeing massive increases in temperature increases from seemingly the same amount of emissions because the ocean will no longer absorb that. But the key thing, though, is thinking about, because that's actually not a very good example. The key thing is thinking about several natural cycles. First off, plants and soil absorb carbon, and I think primarily carbon, could be a couple other greenhouse gases. I don't remember. Except when it gets too warm, when they also kind of reach their limit, and plants will kind of flip, and they'll start shedding carbon instead, basically. So we'll lose these massive carbon sinks, and all the carbon that was absorbed, all the free carbon we got from the environment, that'll suddenly start coming back at us if it gets too warm. Another thing is the albedo effect, which is basically, this one most people know. Snow is white. It bounces heat off into space, basically. Sunlight bounces off of it. But as the snow melts, then it reveals more darker soil and or ocean surface underneath it, which absorbs more heat, which causes the planet to become warmer, which in turn causes more snow to melt. And probably the one that's not such an issue now, but will be an issue once you reach 3, 4, or 5 degrees to an extreme extent is methane hydrate beds that are huge pockets of methane, which is, by the way, a greenhouse gas that traps far more heat than carbon. We just don't produce as much of it. So there are these huge prehistoric pockets underneath the soil and underneath the ocean. And if the planet gets too warm, basically these pockets will explode.
So are those under permafrost? Is that...
Some of them are under seabeds. So this has already started to happen on a small scale. You might remember from many years ago, there was the issue of that big weird hole that opened up in Siberia, and no one knew where it came from. There were weird pictures of it. It was just this chasm that had opened up. Well, where it came from is a methane deposit exploded, and now that all that methane is in the atmosphere. Right. So that's... right now, soil and the albedo effect are really what we have to worry about. But if it gets too bad, then what we're going to have to worry about is huge amounts of methane being dumped into the environment. So we don't really know where the cutoff is. There's a lot we don't know about how quickly it will really get bad. But it's, I think, pretty fair to guess based on the available science that, you know, around the 2-3 degrees mark, which, by the way, kills billions of poor people anyway, that you'll start to see...
Well, I see why they like it.
that you'll start to see feedback loops that can't be stopped.
Right.
So what that all boils down to is we've only got a few decades left to solve this problem.
Right.
Or at least mitigate it enough to buy us extra time.
So how does that happen?
Global armed revolution?
That's what I'm saying. It's like, so let's say...
I don't think it can happen under our current political system, to be honest. I don't think we can get there from here.
Let's say our entire world is the United States and just the United States. Let's take everybody else out, and we're just left with the United States.
Okay.
How does that happen? You know, we're looking at 5 decades until we're really dealing with some serious problems.
Yeah.
And at best, that's like 2 generations, with the current generation still alive.
Oh, I could live to see a point of no return. I'd be, 108 by the turn of the century, but I could live to see a point where I could conclude, yeah, we're dead. I could live to see that.
That is absolutely terrifying.
Yes, it is.
I don't see why we don't just stop crapping in our backyard. It's like...
Because the people who make the decision whether to do that are old and rich, and they're only going to live 15 more years.
Don't they love their babies?
No, they're psychopaths. That's how they got rich.
Even rich old white people love their babies.
I don't know. Honestly. Yeah, okay, maybe you're right, but I think they don't want to face up to what they've done, or there aren't enough of them to make a real difference.
Right.
I don't know. But the vast majority of people who are ultra rich are also ultra conservative. The people who are really in the spotlight are people like Bill Gates, etc., who are famously rather liberal.
Right.
But that's not the average. The average rich person is very conservative and doesn't believe in climate change at all, which, I probably wouldn't want to believe I was responsible for the death of the planet either.
Well, I don't think we can blame the conservatives. I think that...
I'm not blaming the conservatives. I'm blaming the conservative billionaires specifically.
Yeah, but even then, in the 80s, the liberal billionaires were doing all this stuff too. It's like we're looking at generations of people who are still alive. Somehow, I think the only way that we can take care of this is if somehow we can separate this from the dichotomy in this country, this split in the country that isn't going to go away for a couple of generations, but somehow we have to remove this topic from it. We have to laser scalpel this one out.
I don't think that's ever happened before.
I don't know. I really feel like we were on the brink of sort of like going toe-to-toe with some major corporations on both sides of the aisle. Trump came in and kind of changed this, but both sides of the aisle were ready to go to war with major corporations prior to Trump. And so I think it is something that maybe we can get back to because, you know, a lot of these people who are on the right are poor and scared and I think are ready to believe that the corporations are a big part of their problem.
Maybe so.
You know.
But they don't... I don't know. There's got to be some way to handle this. Otherwise... I mean, if there's no solution, then nothing matters, really.
Right. Well, that's where the hard part comes in, because there is no solution, because as soon as we take this out of our microcosm we're working with of solely the United States, we hit China. We hit India. We hit these massive polluters that are really polluting even worse than we are.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, part of the rationale for that is, hey, we didn't get to use dirty fuel sources for 200 years. Now we're trying to modernize. Let us do this in peace.
Right.
And so we say, no, you can't. You'll kill us all. And they say, okay, so give us money to modernize without using dirty sources. And we say, we'll get back to you on that.
Right.
Ultimately, I do feel this comes down to the United States, Britain, countries like that, refusing to pony up. I don't really blame countries like China and India, who I blame for a lot of stuff, to be honest, but I don't think it's fair to expect them to take the brunt of this, honestly, because
I agree.
The fact that we are rich countries, we owe that to fossil fuels, so we need to pay to make it right. And
even outside of us paying, you can't lead from the back. You have to lead from the front. Yeah. And if you're not in the front, then you ain't leading. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I totally agree with you. All right, you're listening to Radio Wasteland. Thanks for checking us out. Don't forget, if you're a doomsday prepper, stock up on sunscreen.